Did the Cook County State Attorney make the right call here?
You know, it's very hard to know because now the trust is gone. You don't actually see the gun. They draw a circle and say, oh, that's a gun. Well, it could be a gun. It could just be his hand. It's grainy. So now you're relying on trust. You know that some Chicago cops and other big city cops do have what they call throwdown guns, guns that they drop at the scene. And so now, because
hold on,
let me finish. I'll let you talk. I'll let you talk.
Okay.
So there's a lack of trust now when you have a police department that would hide for a year a videotape showing a police officer killing somebody. And listen, frankly, as soon as that police officer stopped shooting, the good cop should have arrested the police officer. I mean, that would give you confidence. So I do think now you got a big cloud of doubt over every police officer.
Well, tonight, fresh outrage in Chicago over the decision not to criminally charge the police officer who killed 25-year-old Ronald Johnson. At a press conference today, officials played a dash cam video of the shooting for the first time and said an independent review board decided the officer did nothing wrong. Mr. Johnson was killed in October of 2014, just 8 days before 17-year-old Laquan McDonald was killed by a police officer. Video of the teenager's shooting was released just 2 weeks ago, the day that the officer who killed him was charged with first-degree murder. Its graphic images sparked protests that flared up again after the release of police reports that contradict what the video itself shows. Now, today, the U.S. Attorney General announced the Justice Department is investigating the Chicago Police Department's use of force practices. Not the first time the city's police force has faced scrutiny and accusations of protecting their own. Gary Tuckman tonight reports.
What you're watching are Chicago police protecting their own. A human shield of supporters and fellow cops surrounding Commander Glenn Evans as he leaves the courtroom in September of last year.
Okay. Commander.
The highly decorated cop was charged with aggravated battery and official misconduct after allegedly tackling Ricky Williams in January 2013 on Chicago's South Side. Police say Evans was patrolling the area when he saw Williams with a gun. Evans chased Williams down and tackled him in an abandoned home.
The defendant then stuck his Smith & Wesson .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol deep down the victim's throat.
Prosecutors say DNA matching Ricky Williams was found on Commander Evans' pistol. The gun Williams was carrying, police say, was never found. And Williams filed a complaint, saying the officer threatened to kill him. This is how former police boss Superintendent Gary McCarthy responded when he was asked whether he supported Evans.
I'm not going to answer that question. It's absurd. Do I support him? If I didn't support him, he wouldn't be there.
The officer pleaded not guilty. His trial starts on December 8th. Officers protecting their own is hardly unique, and it is most often justified. But this wasn't the first complaint of abuse against Lieutenant Evans. Rennie Simmons, a partially disabled man working for the water company, won a $100,000 settlement against the city after he claimed Evans beat him unprovoked after he tried to post a water cutoff notice on Evans' property. So what's happened to the cop? In a word, nothing, except he's been promoted to commander.
There's so much protection built in for police officers, and I'm not a critic of protections built in for police officers, but it has gone so far that it's virtually impossible to meaningfully discipline a police officer, even when they really do break the rules.
In fact, the University of Chicago found that in the last 4.5 years of the more than 28,000 complaints leveled against the city's police, less than 2% led to discipline of any kind. So why is it difficult to discipline bad Chicago cops? Some argue the system of investigating police is broken, and that the union that protects them is too strong. Dean Angelo Sr. is the Chicago Fraternal Order of Police president.
Is it possible bad cops are still out in the streets and you're protecting them, and that's why they're out in the streets?
I protect all of my members, and I will continue to do that.
And after Laquan McDonald was killed by Chicago police officer Jason Van Dyke, the version of events told by the Chicago police officers at the scene and the union was different than what tape of the shooting showed.
Is there a culture of covering up?
Well, if they would have covered it up, you never saw the videotape.
Well, they covered it up for a long time now.
But it was adjudicated and the officer was separated.
But it was covered up for months, and that's my question. Is there a culture of covering up?
Based on that incident, that's a culture?
Can it be improved? Well, there's much more than that, you know that. But can it be improved in this city? That's what I'm saying.
Anything can be improved.
And as Officer Van Dyke made bail and was escorted out of jail, the union head was right there with him, once again protecting one of his own. Gary Tuckman, CNN, Chicago.
Joining me now, CNN political commentator and former Obama administration official Van Jones, also CNN law enforcement analyst and retired NYPD detective Harry Houck. Van, you heard that statistic in Gary's piece, less than 2% of 28,000 complaints against Chicago police in the last 4.5 years leading to discipline of any kind. Is that too little?
Well, it's hard to imagine that 98% of the people who are filing complaints are just completely, groundless in what they are putting forward. Any human system, this is not about being pro-cop or anti-cop. Any human system that does not have adequate checks and balances will tend toward corruption and abuse over time. That's why you have meat inspectors. That's why you have building inspectors. Not because you hate the butchers, because you hate the construction guys. You just want to make sure every human system has checks and balances. What you're seeing with law enforcement all too often is that good idea of let's make sure that good cops don't get in trouble is now extending to where bad cops know they're not going to get in trouble, and that's where we are. That's bad.
Harry, is there too much protection for police officers in terms from civilian complaints?
Well, I don't know. I mean, those statistics, they seem a little low, 2%. But like I said, each case has got to be taken on as a separate case itself. Now, the Fraternal Order of Police, it's their job to protect the police officer. That's their union, just like anybody else. And the police are afforded the same rights as anyone else. All right?
Do you think this idea of the blue wall of silence, does that still exist? Is that still an issue?
Maybe in the minds of some police officers, yes. But I found that wall's been broken down a lot in the past 20 years. I know when I was in internal affairs, a lot of calls that we got about corruption in police officers at the action desk were actually police officers making the allegations, and they didn't want to be known, so we gave them a number.
The Chicago officer is not going to be charged in the shooting of Ronald Johnson. Obviously comes on the heels of the shooting of Laquan McDonald. Do you think it's fair to compare the two cases?
It's not fair to compare them, no. Then, like I said, each case is individual and different. Here, this recent shooting we're looking at now is the fact that this guy was armed. He had a weapon. One of his buddies gave him up that he was in the car with, that he heard him ejecting around the backseat of the car when they got shot at. So it looks like he had fired a shot from that car, and he definitely was armed. And then when officers shoot, you can shoot an armed suspect running away from you, because at any time when you're running, I can shoot around, I can kill an officer.
Van, did the Cook County State Attorney make the right call here?
It's very hard to know because now the trust is gone. You don't actually see the gun. They draw a circle and say, oh, that's a gun. Well, it could be a gun. It could just be his hand. It's grainy. So now you're relying on trust. You know that some Chicago cops and other big city cops do have what they call throwdown guns, guns that they drop at the scene. And so now,
That's
because
the old days, though, Van.
hold on, let me finish. I'll let you talk. I'll let you talk.
Okay.
So there's a lack of trust now when you have a police department that would hide for a year a videotape showing a police officer killing somebody. And listen, frankly, as soon as that police officer stopped shooting, the good cop should have arrested the police officer. I mean, that would give you confidence. So I do think now you got a big cloud of doubt over every police officer, and that's what's not fair.
The police department didn't hold back that video. All right, that's not that is evidence. All right, so if anybody's going to release that video, that's the district attorney's office. That's not the police.
Sure.
That's something that the district attorney office makes that
decision. That is
decision.
a fair point. That is a fair point. But the relationship between the prosecutors and the police can be so cozy sometimes that it feels from a community point of view that all law enforcement
Let's have evidence,
is not.
Let's have evidence on this stuff. There's no evidence. There's nothing but assumptions here.
Well, that's why we got an investigation from the Department of Justice, because we actually need to get to the bottom of it. And I'm glad that the Department of Justice is going in there, because you now have a city where even the mayor is under suspicion. What did Rahm Emanuel know, and when did he know it? When you've got a police officer sitting there for a year who's clearly a murderer and doesn't get charged until you finally get a video out there in the public eye.
Harry Houck, Van Jones, guys, thanks very much. Just ahead, more from San Bernardino.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.